Hi folks, I'm pumped to kick off the first episode of 2025 with our security team to talk about all things security best practices and the latest enhancements as well. So let's get started. Hi folks, I'm pumped to welcome you in another episode of Winners in the Cloud. This time we will be discussing Windows Cloud Security with the team that built it as well. And as always, please make sure to subscribe on our Windows ID Pro YouTube channel to stay up to date about all the latest news of Windows in the Cloud, Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So you can find it on the link below, aka.ms/Windows in the Cloud. So with that, I want to introduce the team here. So welcome everyone. Glad to have you all here on the call. Security team, first time here for most of you as well. So let's start with Pratik. Who are you and what are you doing as part of our team?
Hey folks, Christian, so excited to be here. My name is Pratik and they sometimes call me Skipper or Security Compliance Identity and Privacy Lead here at Windows in the Cloud business.
Thanks for the intro and great to have you here as a first timer as well. Looking forward to the conversation. Lavanya, same thing for you. Great to have you here as well. Can you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Lavanya, and I'm a principal product manager with Windows Cloud Security team. I primarily work on secure access, secure data as part of Windows Cloud Security.
Thanks, Lavanya. And last but definitely not least, David, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Christian. My name is David Bélanger. I'm also one of the principal technical program managers on the team. In the last few years, I've been focusing on some of our identity and authentication investments. I'm glad to be here to cover some of those investments that we've made recently.
Yeah, thanks, David. As one of the veterans on this team, owning clients and RDS back in the days, RDMI, it's great to have you here as well. We're not going to talk about that, but maybe we throw in some jokes or some fun stories there along the way. Hey, let's start with something like security is top of mind these days. You see it everywhere. We announced our SFI and investments and initiative as part of Microsoft All Up. Why is security so important as part of our products and as well the trajectory where customers join us on the modern workplace and the modern desktop journey with Intune and Windows 365? So Lavanya, can you share more there?
Sure, that's a great question. So typically an organization's health is heavily dependent on how security is managed, whether it's within the company, whether it's the partner ecosystem, or even externally. So as these organizations grow with increasing number of systems and networks, the threat vulnerability also increases for potential malicious attacks. So what you're seeing right here is a typical security threat scenario. I want to walk you through in this complex matrix of evolving threat. Each hexagon, you can see light blue hexes and dark blue hexes. So the light blue hexes indicate internal vectors like bad practices or bad actors within an organization, while the dark blue hexes indicate external risk vectors. Both these internal and external threat vectors, by the way, have the same degree of adverse impact, and there's equal need to prevent both proactively and mitigate immediately. So let's take an example. So let's say there's an IoT-based attack. There's a hacker who gets control of the device. They steal data, join a group of infected devices, create a botnet, and they can launch a DDoS attack. So that's your light blue hexes. In the event of, let's say, an insider attack who's using unauthorized applications, it's easy for malware to get installed on those devices, leading to a data breach. So we've seen that 80% of organizations report a data breach, which leads to a huge loss of revenue, almost close to 15 million. So now that we've understood what's the threat vector, let's actually see what organizations are looking for. They're looking for protecting identity across fragmented systems. As we know, all organizations, they're growing, evolving. So maintaining that visibility and control, access permissions becomes increasingly challenging when you have these multiple networks and systems and applications. So granularity in defining these identity and access policies and providing defaults to ensure key security becomes very important to prevent that malware, the phishing and spoofing, and other types of identity attacks. Secure access is also vital in safeguarding remote work environments. So, preventing unauthorized access is something that our customers are looking for. Data protection, super important. We know that increasing number of data breaches are happening that I've talked about in the first slide. So either having strong encryption practices while working with sensitive data and in transit is also important. Real-time monitoring and analytics. It's important to know and monitor activities so that you can detect threats proactively and mitigate these risks and prevent any kind of those expensive data breaches. Complying with regulations, reducing the risk of having uneven or out of date security policies is also important. So we need to make sure we comply and follow the regulations like GDPR, HIPAA, and so on. And again, organizations are increasing lots of applications, so working across these different systems is a challenge for customers. So they're looking for something, a solution that spans across and has seamless workflows that prevents these external threats which can infiltrate our systems. So now that I've talked about what organizations need, let's actually dig in and see how Windows Cloud Solutions is helping the security posture of an organization and how we can manage and mitigate these internal risks. So Microsoft has invested in a robust security system that works across various Microsoft products like Microsoft Defender, Intune, Entra, to protect employee identity, access, and company data. Windows Cloud Solutions supports three key security pillars: secure identity, access, and data. So we've kind of leveraged the same 6 blocks in this slide as well to keep that flow similar. So the first block, granular, we do have granular IT-defined reauthentication policies, which will help ensure only the unauthorized people can access these devices. Secure access is safeguarding those remote work environments, so making sure Windows Cloud Security provides secure access protocols and so on to make sure that secure access is played in. Secure data, we do have data protection techniques like watermarking, screen capture, customer key protections as part of our secure data. And then also we have Windows Cloud Solutions also support user trust and other security capabilities that span across industry standards and regulations. And finally, Windows Cloud Solutions connect with other Microsoft solutions and achieve that interoperability.
Well, this is awesome, Lavanya. Great to kind of level set the vision and as well how it all comes together as a portfolio, as you just said, Intune, Entra, Windows Cloud Services all coming together without the complexity as real SaaS coming together. So Windows Security, is it like a standalone solution? And how are we ensuring that our customers get security solutions that tie into the rest? Like, how does it all come together, Pratik? Can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely, Christian. Very excited to do that. First of all, Lavanya, thanks for the great head start in terms of explaining what exploits, what attackers typically look at. Windows Cloud Security, Christian, is not necessarily a standalone solution. In fact, we are quite expanded out, and one of those important pillars in the Microsoft Windows Cloud ecosystem, providing the security value for Windows in the cloud, which are the products for Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, DevBox, RD, remote desktop services, and so forth. But also one of those important pillars which leverage and work together in a very typical, quintessential one Microsoft ecosystem. And that's where we show our strength. If you start taking a look at this visual, the robust Microsoft security ecosystem expands across multiple products: identity, devices, Microsoft Sentinel for visibility and analytics, providing automation with those very key APIs, as well as some of the outcomes that we drive that our customers directly ask for, protecting data, applications, their infrastructure specifically with private and internet access, as well as a broad ecosystem of network security product and ecosystem. Some more points to add, Christian, as we look at this expanded portfolio, Windows Cloud essentially creates a smooth interoperability and seamlessness, particularly with the flow of data when that threat intelligence comes in, as well as the new security copilot or the AI element, where the security policy and the enforcements, which are done in real time, have taken effect with a lot more automation, with a lot more default in place. So really, if anything, Windows Cloud Security is a broad ecosystem across multiple products across Microsoft, providing real-time data and insights.
Well, that's awesome. And I hear a lot about zero trust. A lot of customers during Ignite have been talking about it. We have been doing great announcements at Ignite as well, which we will touch on in a bit, and some demos as well. But how does zero trust apply to Windows Cloud?
Absolutely, 100%. This is a great question, particularly because zero trust has been one of those buzzwords, isn't it? Like, people use it often. Sometimes people understand it really, really well. I mean, frankly, if we were to be candid, and sometimes people don't and continue using it as a buzzword. Zero trust is essentially a phenomenon. It's not a product. It's not a program. It's essentially a practice which has to be done on a continuous basis. Oftentimes you hear organization that we are completely embracing zero trust. What does that truly mean? Embracing zero trust for any organization is really all about trusting a certain entity, a user, an application, or a device only if it meets the certain criteria. And for Windows Cloud Security, we specifically go quite deep into all of those criteria. When we look at securing the user, we specifically focus on securing identities, access, and data. Across the enablement of identity, access, and data, one of the core important things, particularly that you also pointed out earlier, is the Secure Future Initiative, or SFI, that Satya has specifically spoken about. It includes all the important elements of how important it is to secure our applications by default without any extra efforts or over leverage of the admin efforts, so that everything is secure for our customers out of the box. With secure identity, more specifically, when we start thinking more deeply about the phenomena of zero trust, it's all about securing that Windows experience with minimal risk and an extremely smooth identity, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, even more so today with Windows Hello and FIDO-based experiences that we provide end-to-end when the user logs in to the device through in their cloud PCs or virtual machines in the session. Secure access is all about securing that data and apps, particularly knowing the persistent device management state, including the user's risk profile. And secure data is specifically our focus and promise to our customers' data, where we protect the data inside the session using Microsoft zero trust standards, adhering to it completely. While we do all of the secure identity, access, and data, and we invest with functionalities and toolkits for our customers, we make sure that security operations is top-notch, which means that there is continuous control and monitoring, as well as vulnerability assessment and mitigation of any zero-day threats and zero-day threat vectors that come in that sometimes we are ourselves not aware of, and be still able to protect them, particularly because of the zero trust principles that we deeply adhere to.
Hey, this is so interesting, Pratik. Thanks for sharing this. And as you know, every Microsoft employee has a core priority on security, representing really how important security is from within the engineering team to the customer. But security is here to stay and should be the number one thing. And we see a lot of customers joining Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop to improve the security posture as well, with the products that we represent, to make like the streaming experience as much as secure it can be as part of the products offering we have. And one thing you mentioned there was security identity being an important pillar. So what are the key features here? And I want to see it in action as well. Like, David, you prepared some cool demos. Can you elaborate on that one?
Absolutely, Christian. And I think when we talk about secure identity, we have to start with passwordless authentication. Nowadays, you often hear in the news data breaches in different organizations and enterprises. A lot of them are often caused by either weak passwords or leaked passwords, or even passwords that are reused between different apps and services by the same user. A good way to help mitigate those or reduce the risks there is by enforcing your users to use passwordless authentication. Some of the latest technologies around that is around passkeys, whether those passkeys are stored in an application like Microsoft Authenticator or on a secure device or a security key like a FIDO2 device. In both of those cases, that really helps bring up the security of your to access different apps and services in your environment. That already exists today. You might already be using this with Microsoft 365 and other apps and services. A lot of this you can control with Microsoft Entra ID by setting different conditional access policies that either require different levels of credential types or authentication, including those phish-resistant credentials. You can also choose how often your users would have to re-authenticate when they access your apps and services. And Windows 365 being built on top of Microsoft Entra ID can be controlled in the same way with very similar conditional access policies. What I want to talk about and show today is how that integrates into Windows 365 and how we leverage that to both provide a great user experience, but also a more secure experience by ensuring that we can support passwordless authentication all the way through. And to do that, let's jump into the Intune portal where we go and configure Windows 365. So in this case, I'm creating a new provisioning policy. You would configure it as normal, but there's also an option there at the bottom to use Microsoft Entra for single sign-on. You can enable that, and that will be applicable for any new cloud PCs that you create moving forward. There's also an option to go edit one of your existing provisioning policy, like this one, where at the top you can now apply a change to the configuration, and as part of that, apply Microsoft Entra single sign-on to your existing cloud PCs. Note that in some cases, if those cloud PCs were deployed before April 2023, there may be a chance of a reboot, but otherwise it's a seamless enablement of single sign-on, and it gets applied to all of your cloud PCs where users can now benefit from single sign-on. Now, what does that mean from an end user standpoint? So in this case, I'm showing the experience from an end user where in my company, I've already required passwordless authentication and phish-resistant credentials, and I've also enabled single sign-on. So what that looks like is as a user, I launch the Windows app and I go sign in for the first time to access my resources, my cloud PC. I'm able, through the authentication in Microsoft Entra, to choose different authentication methods. In this case, I will be using a standard security key, like a FIDO2 device, which prompts me to enter my PIN and then complete the authentication securely before I get access to my different resources, in this case, a cloud PC or a virtual desktop. Then that's great, I'm connected in. And then the second part is where we enable single sign-on. Before single sign-on, when a user would launch a connection, they would normally be prompted again to authenticate to Windows itself. The beauty of single sign-on is when we've converted the authentication to the remote operating system or the cloud PC to also be Microsoft Entra ID based. Since I've already signed into Microsoft Entra, I don't get prompted again when I launch the connection and access my cloud PC. So I can make it all the way through with just the initial prompt. Again, as an admin, if you've configured your conditional access policies to also include some sign-in frequency, for example, for unmanaged devices or bring your own devices, there may be a chance the user might be prompted again to authenticate when launching a new connection, but that's up to your configuration in your environment and the level of trust that you have with your users on different types of devices. Now that we're inside the session, by default, I get a great experience with single sign-on when I access any applications that are Entra ID based. So apps and websites that are, or even Office applications. However, there may be cases where an end user might need to access secure sites or secure data inside of the cloud PC. And there may be cases where they're prompted to authenticate again. For that, we have a second feature that is available today called WebAuthn Redirection. In this case, let me show you what that looks like. So once I'm inside the session here, let me minimize the window of my session of my cloud PC to show what that looks like when a user launches, goes to a website that requires reauthentication. In this case, we're just going to use a test website that will actually make an authentication request as an end user. So in this case, you can see that I access the website and it's prompting me to authenticate. You can see that I've minimized the Cloud PC window, but my authentication screen is actually outside of that remote session. You can see I've moved it off of the actual screen of the Cloud PC, and it's running on my local machine. What happened there with WebAuthn redirection is that all of the WebAuthn requests, which is the standard way to sign into Windows applications and services, are now redirected to my local PC, where I can use any locally attached security devices or things like Windows Hello PIN or face recognition or USB devices or passkeys that are connected directly or saved directly to my device to complete the authentication. In this case, I'll use the same security key to complete the authentication. And then you can see after I enter my PIN, I'm able to also successfully authenticate into that session. So with that, WebAuthn redirection is currently available on the Windows client, but we're working to bring that into all of our other platforms across the different clients that we have and the different Windows apps that we have available. So in a nutshell, really, we highly recommend everyone to really start looking at password authentication and phish-resistant credentials to really improve how you secure your identities in your organizations.
Well, that's so cool, David. And passwordless authentication is the future, as she said as well. Weak passwords, such a risk for an organization. And one thing I have myself personally, I have a hard time remembering all these passwords, and password managers and all these things are like a solution, but not really a solution, right? So love this. And what about like unmanaged endpoints, like bring your own devices and secure access? What are we doing there?
Honestly, Christian, one of the key scenarios that we often hear from different organizations that we talk to, there's more and more of a trend of wanting to allow end users to bring in their personal devices. Or there's also cases where you've got vendors or contractors working for your company, but they have devices that are actually joined to their own corporate environment and so can't directly be managed by your company. In this case, we've got a lot of features available to just secure kind of the data and access for your environment. But one of the key features I wanted to highlight today is something we recently announced at Ignite in November 2024, which is the integration of Intune mobile app management into our Windows apps. We have started by announcing the general availability of the integration with our iOS client, and also we have integrated MAM with our Android client, which was also announced, which is currently in preview. Today for the demo, I'll be using an iOS device to just showcase this. And let's first start by saying that an admin has configured MAM policies to be able to restrict access to the local storage on the iPad so that it can be used only if the iPad is a managed device. And we'll show the difference, what happens between the managed device and an unmanaged iPad. And on top of this, one of the beauty of integrating with MAM is you'll also get all of the great features that already come by default with MAM integration, for example, requiring a PIN when launching the applications and some of the other standard features of MAM. So in this case, let's start with a managed iPad. So I've got a managed iPad here. I'm already signed into my workspaces. And then when I launch a connection to my Cloud PC and I get inside the session and I open Explorer, I already had it open for the purpose of the demo, but you can see that I've got my local drive is redirected to the Cloud PC, and I'm able to access some of those files. If I needed to load a document in my Cloud PC that currently resides on my iPad or transfer information between the two, I would be able to do that because my company has trusted me to be able to do that from a managed iPad. Now let's look at a different approach where the same user is trying to access from an unmanaged iPad, but again, the admin has configured the MAM policies to only access the local drive from a managed iPad. So in this case, I launch my Windows app or my application, and then I sign in to go access my Cloud PC. Once I've got my list of different resources I can access to and launch a connection, we now detect that there were policies applied for MAM. And since those policies weren't there, in some cases, they may require a restart of the app, and in some cases, they may not. But in my case, it did. So my application restarted once to apply all of those policies. And then I launched a connection, again, to the same cloud PC. In this case, since I'm coming in from a unmanaged iPad, I don't have access to the local device or the local drive of that iPad, and it prevents me from copying information back and forth between my unsecure iPad and my corporate environment where my admin wants to keep all of that data safe.
Well, this is great, David, and great example of how customer obsessed and security orientated we are as an engineering team. And in fact, I saw Satya on stage at Ignite announcing this as well, which is pretty awesome. Hey, keeping organizations' data secure is also very important. Governance and all these things coming together. So secure data, secure by default are two of the other pillars that have been mentioned in the beginning. So what are we doing there? And did you prepare a demo for that as well?
Absolutely. And we do have quite a few features already built in around securing data. From being able to leverage Azure Disk Encryption to Microsoft Purview customer managed keys. We also recently announced the ability to have unidirectional clipboard to protect either the local user's device or the corporate environment. But what I'd like to focus on today is on another feature that we announced at Ignite, which is the integration with Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management with forensic evidence. This is a little bit different than some of the other secure data features that we talked about. And this one is more to be able to investigate in the case that a data breach does happen, to see what happened and see if it was purposeful, if it was an insider vector that caused the breach, if it was just a user that mistakenly leaked some of that information or accessed data they weren't supposed to. So let's take a look at what that looks like and how we integrate with Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management. So first, we'll start from the Microsoft Purview portal and go to the Insider Risk Management section where I've got a couple policies defined, but for the purpose of the video, we'll create a new policy. And to keep things simple, let's just go with a simple example around accessing health records in your organizations. First, I'll use an existing template around health records to just keep this simple. And as part of that, I then need to give it a name, and optionally, I can also give it a description so I remember exactly which policies have what effect in my environment. Once I'm done with that, I can choose which users are going to be monitored for these activities. I can leverage either direct user assignment, or I can also use enter groups in my environment to choose which users are going to be have Microsoft Purview enabled for them, and will keep an eye on how they access different corporate data. In this case, I can also decide on what triggers the Microsoft Purview to keep track of things. So in this case, I'll use some of the standard indicators around accessing health records. There's a set of 5 built-in indicators. So we'll just use those for the purpose of this demo, and then go ahead with the standard defaults for the other options for now, and save this policy. Once the policy has been saved, I can see the different ways I want to be alerted. In this case, if you look in the Stay Updated section, you can choose whether you'll be emailed and when and how you want to access the different alerts, separate from just coming in to view them directly in the portal, which is what we'll talk about next. So in the case of once in a while I want to review, let's say once a week, I want to see if there were any alerts in my environment, I can come back to the Purview portal and then go under the Insider Risk Management and have a look at the different alerts. All of my alerts will be there. There's tons of great information that's available for review to see what really happened and see which one I might want to drill into a little bit more. In this case, we can see that I have an alert where a user accessed restricted patient's health record. So I want to know a bit more about that and see if that was legitimate or what did they do with that data. So let's drill in a little bit. I can go into forensic evidence and then get some of the screen recordings that have from when the incident happened, so I can really see what happened. I also have the ability to watch a video recording of what happened while the user was accessing the information. So here I can see that the end user actually opened up some health records, and they went and launched a built-in application in Windows to snip it to access and grab some of those health records. And unfortunately, they intentionally went and saved that information into their OneDrive. Who knows what they're going to do with that information afterward, but it definitely looks like they were accessing information and kind of moving it somewhere that they weren't supposed to. In that case, I'll have the option to go have a discussion with that user and kind of see what I want to do with that information. But at least I've got a clear information about what happened in what case, and I can make a better judgment call as to whether it was malicious, intentional, or not. So that's one of the great ways that not only we try to prevent as much as possible data from leaking in the first place, but if it does happen, we're also providing additional tools to really see what happens and take the appropriate action to mitigate those, and also help prevent them from happening again in the future. So, and that concludes our 3 demos for today, Christian. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, David. Great to have you here, and as well the rest of the team. So before we wrap up completely, how can people learn more about this? Security best practices, principles, zero trust, all these components we just talked about. Is there a blog that you can point out to, Pratik?
Absolutely. We have great content online. We have a lot of assets. One of the blogs which has been really popular that you can find on aka.ms/WinCloudSec blog. So that's Windows Cloud Security blog, where you'll find all the information and more with regards to how the existing threat landscape evolves around what we have typically seen with our customers, more commonly in Windows Cloud, as well as how the mitigation techniques that we have applied, as well as the tools that we supply, have been effective in making sure that the zero trust principles are adhered. And Microsoft has been extremely successful, particularly with Secure Future Initiative that you've heard of. And we continue to invest more as we progress across the board in secure identities, access, protecting the data, keeping in mind the security default out of the box, as well as the design concepts operationalized across the board for all the security products in the Windows Cloud arena.
Hey, thanks, Pratik, and thanks for joining, and the rest of the team as well. Sticking with you here for a small bit, how can people stay in touch with you, Pratik? Follow you on LinkedIn or something like that?
Yes, absolutely. LinkedIn is one of the best ways. We are extremely reachable. I know a lot of folks reach out. We are easily able to navigate them through our customer connections program, or sometimes be able to help them directly if there is a quick security question and so forth around Windows Cloud. Absolutely. LinkedIn is one of the best ways.
Thanks, Pratik. And Lavanya, how can people stay in touch with you?
I'm on LinkedIn, so yeah, catch me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, all questions on you, Lavanya. Hey, David, how can people stay in touch with you?
Absolutely. Not to be a broken record, but same thing. You can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me a note or a question, and happy to chat.
Hi, thanks. And thanks again, everyone here for joining. Great content, great vision. Definitely want to get you back at some point. And thank you for watching. And please ensure to check aka.ms/Windows in the Cloud for previous episodes and news, and as well future episodes to come. So